Good evening. Welcome back to Ponzinomics. I'm Alex.
Evening, everyone. I'm Sam. Tonight we're going to Germany, a payments company, are missing 1.9 billion euros, a CEO in a black turtleneck, and a fugitive who is almost certainly in Moscow right now, sitting very comfortably indeed.
This is Wirecard, and it is one of the strangest stories we've covered.
And that is saying something.
Wirecard was founded in 1999 in Munich, a payments processor, the kind of company that sits invisibly between you and your online purchase, handling the transaction. Unglamorous work, essential work, and for a long time, genuinely functional.
Then Markus Braun arrived.
He certainly did. Austrian, always wore a black turtleneck. Visionary, ambitious, joined as CEO in 2002 and spent the next 2 decades turning Wirecard into what looked like Germany's answer to PayPal. By 2018, Wirecard was valued at 24 billion euros and had replaced Commerzbank in the DAX, Germany's blue-chip stock index. The 30 most important companies in the German economy. Wirecard was one of them.
The future of European fintech. Right there, in a black turtleneck.
The story Braun told was compelling. Wirecard was processing payments globally, expanding into Asia, building a banking subsidiary, growing faster than any competitor. The numbers kept going up.
The numbers kept going up. Always the warning sign.
Here's how it worked. Wirecard claimed to have cash, real euros, sitting in trustee accounts held by third-party partners in the Philippines and other locations. This cash was counted as part of their balance sheet. It was what made the company look financially healthy.
And the cash?
Didn't exist.
1.9 euros.
1.9 billion euros. When auditors finally went to verify it, the Philippine banks confirmed the accounts didn't exist. Not that the money had moved, not that it was complicated. The accounts did not exist.
Someone just wrote the number down.
Someone wrote the number down. For years. And Ernst Young, one of the biggest and most prestigious auditing firms in the world, signed off on the accounts. Every year, without properly verifying that the cash was actually there.
Brilliant, truly. The auditors for a 24 billion euro company apparently didn't check if the money existed. Tremendous work. Really earning that fee.
To be fair to EY, and I use the phrase loosely, Wirecard went to extraordinary lengths to provide convincing fake documentation, false bank statements, forged confirmation letters, an entire infrastructure of deception.
Right. To be fair to the people who didn't check if the money existed.
Fair. So Markus Braun is the face of this story. But the more interesting character is his COO, Jan Marsalek.
Jan Marsalek.
Austrian, charming, widely traveled, claimed to have connections everywhere. Intelligence services, political figures, arms dealers. Whether those claims were true or self-aggrandizement, nobody was entirely sure. What we know is that Marsalek was the operational heart of Wirecard. While Braun was the vision, Marsalek was the machinery.
And when it collapsed?
Braun resigned and was arrested within days. Marsalek was fired. And then, before anyone could stop him, he disappeared.
Where?
Belarus. Then almost certainly Russia. Bellingcat tracked him there. He is currently on Interpol's most wanted list. There is a red notice against him, and he is, by all available evidence, sitting in Moscow. Comfortably. Under protection.
Russian intelligence protection.
That is the strong suspicion, yes. There are suggestions, and we say suggestions carefully, that Marsalek had connections to Russian intelligence that predated the collapse, that Wirecard may have been useful to certain interests beyond just processing payments.
So we have a missing 1.9 billion euros, a CEO in handcuffs, and a COO who is almost certainly in the Kremlin's back garden. And one of the executives connected to him died unexplained in Manila.
Christopher Bauer died in the Philippines, unexplained.
Of course he did.
Here is the part of this story that I find most remarkable. The fraud wasn't hidden particularly well. A journalist at the Financial Times named Dan McCrum started investigating Wirecard in 2015. He published article after article, raising questions about the accounts, the Asian operations that didn't add up, the cash that couldn't be verified, the acquisitions at wildly inflated prices.
And
Germany's financial regulator, BaFin, responded by investigating the journalist.
Sorry, they investigated the journalist.
They investigated Dan McCrum for potential market manipulation. They banned short selling of Wirecard's stock. They treated the people raising the alarm as the problem. Commerzbank analysts called the FT articles, and I want to be precise here, fake news. Goldman Sachs had a conviction buy rating on the stock until September 2019. Almost universally, the German financial establishment rallied around Wirecard and against the people trying to expose it.
A conviction buy from Goldman Sachs, 11 months before the whole thing collapsed.
Dan McCrum kept a hammer under his bed during this period because he was receiving threats.
A journalist investigating a payments company kept a hammer under his bed because he was receiving threats from a payments company.
Wirecard had also hired the former head of Libyan foreign intelligence to run sting operations against journalists and short sellers.
They hired a Libyan spy chief to go after a journalist from the Financial Times.
Correct.
For a payments company. Normal behavior.
In 2020, KPMG conducted a special audit. They couldn't verify the majority of Wirecard's profits from 2016 to 2018. There wasn't sufficient documentation. In June 2020, Wirecard finally admitted that the 1.9 billion euros was missing. The CEO resigned. Wirecard filed for insolvency within days.
How did the market respond?
The share price fell 98% in days. A 24 billion euro company.
Gone.
BaFin's president, faced with the wreckage, described it as, and these are his exact words, a complete disaster.
A complete disaster. What a light bulb moment. Brilliant. Thank you for that forensic assessment. Perhaps if BaFin had spent slightly less time investigating journalists and slightly more time investigating the company whose accounts contained 1.9 billion imaginary euros, we might have arrived at the complete disaster conclusion somewhat earlier. But what would I know?
The accounting watchdog responsible for overseeing Wirecard, a 24 billion euro company, had 15 employees and an annual budget of 6 million euros.
15 people, 6 million euros. To oversee the entire German stock market. Professionalism and competency at its finest.
They only concluded the published accounts were inadequate after the company had already gone insolvent.
Useful. Very timely. Thanks for coming. Here's what gets me about Wirecard compared to our other episodes. With FTX, you had chaos and incompetence wrapped around deliberate fraud. With Enron, you had brilliant people constructing an elaborate lie. With Terra Luna, you had a man tweeting inspirational messages while people lost their savings. Wirecard is something slightly different.
How so?
Wirecard is a story about institutions failing completely. Not one institution, all of them. The auditor, the regulator, the banks, the analysts, the government. every single body that exists to catch exactly this kind of thing looked at Wirecard, saw what it wanted to see, and punished the people telling the truth.
Dan McCrum spent 6 years being investigated, sued, threatened, and dismissed. He was right for every single one of those 6 years. The people calling his work fake news were wrong for every single one of those 6 years.
And Marsalek is in Moscow. And 1.9 billion euros is still missing, and nobody has really been held to account in a way that feels proportionate to what happened.
Markus Braun is on trial in Germany. The trial began in 2024 and is ongoing. Some lower-level executives have received sentences, but the architect of the operational fraud, if that's what Marsalek was, is unreachable.
The money is gone, the man is gone, and the journalist kept a hammer under his bed for 6 years.
That's Wirecard. What did we learn?
That institutional credibility is not the same as institutional integrity. We keep saying it because it keeps being true. That a regulator whose response to fraud allegations is to go after the people making them is not a regulator. It's a shield. That 1.9 billion euros doesn't vanish. It goes somewhere. And that somewhere, a man who knows exactly where it went, is living very comfortably indeed.
A German fintech darling, a black turtleneck, 1.9 billion imaginary euros, a Libyan spy chief, a journalist with a hammer under his bed, and a fugitive in Moscow. Just a normal payments company.
Next episode, we go to New York. A man named Bernie Madoff, who ran the longest, largest Ponzi scheme in history. $65 billion for 40 years while sitting on the board of NASDAQ.
This time it's different.
It never is.